All right, I think that we are now live. Can you
Realsies?
guys? I think it's happening. Let's just see.
Got an error occurred.
Oh, here it comes.
There we go.
Coming.
Yeah,
All
Boom.
right.
we're bad. We're nationwide. All right.
All right. Let's kick it off.
Okay, here we go. Hey, folks. I'm David Goldstein.
I am Brian Brinkman.
You are tuned into episode. There's someone down the web. Oh, yeah. You're tuned into the live deep dive number 4 of the Beyond the Pond podcast. This is the podcast which, generally speaking, Brian and myself utilize the music of Phish to help introduce the listener to other bands. It's usually not jam bands because we love Phish. We are Phish fans, especially in quarantine. Listen to Phish quite a bit. But there's a lot of other bands out there. We are trying to get you to listen to some of those as well. And there's 3 of us. We've got a special guest tonight.
What's going on
who's
here?
that? Hey, Tim. How are you?
Well, hey, how we doing at the pond?
We got Tim Showalter of Strand of Oaks hanging out with us. How you doing, man?
I ran through a sprinkler today, so that's like, you can't really beat that. I ran through a sprinkler, and it felt amazing.
I saw your yard work dance moves.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is the band is kind of like it's a vehicle for me to become a viral influencer. That's the main goal. You know, the 15 years of being Strand of Oaks is just hoping to kind of give up the band and jump directly into meme marketing, I guess it's a company I've started, so pretty excited about it.
I mean, because of that, like what's happening right now and needing to like think outside the box creatively and, you know, from a lifestyle standpoint, this has to just be great for you if you're like spending all your time now focused on your marketing company.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a team of like 65 people working for it. So, I mean, it's pretty much international at this point. And again, just leave the music behind as fast as possible just to get more into merchandising and kind of like app development is what Strand of Oaks is kind of evolving into. So, yeah, it was a fun run in the music world. But
I mean, the music never really meant anything, right? Like
no, not at all.
We're not live yet. You can be honest with us.
Yeah, it was mostly just building towards the app development is what I was is truly what I was looking for. You know, games kind of like similar to Farmville or things.
Sure. I remember Farmville.
Right now. Kind of Oaksville, where everybody walks around in like an existential crisis.
Well, the name of the game actually is the name of the last Strand of Oaks record. It's like Eraserland. Right.
Exactly. Oh man. Well, I'm getting this one started off real fresh right now. I think it was a sprinkler.
I mean, you've got to rush to buy your LPs right now because people are realizing it's the last of the music that they're going to get from you. So
just went up on Discogs.
So as you guys can tell, we are joined here by our good buddy, one of our favorite musicians, Tim Showalter, Strand of Oaks. We're going to hang out tonight. We're talking about a show that happened very close to Tim's upbringing in central Indiana. And we're going to dive deep into August 10th, 1997. We're going to talk then a bit about what's happening kind of from a musical standpoint as musicians and artists are kind of dealing with this new normal along with music fans like ourselves. And we're just going to see where things go from there. But what are kind of our general themes that we're going to talk about here, Dave?
Well, let's see. So some themes we've got laid out would be rebellious Phish. Phish at Deer Creek in 1.0, Noblesville, Indiana. And we've got the man behind Strand of Oaks. We're probably going to talk about some Strand of Oaks as well.
Let's do it.
I'd say on that note, let's get to the Phish. Then we'd play a riff. but we're live, so let's just get to the fish.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Think of London. Yeah.
Already. So before we jump into the show, Tim, I want to put you on the spot here. When we were talking before we went to plan out this show and whatnot, you had said Deer Creek is very near and dear to your heart. And I know I grew up in the Midwest. It's one of my favorite venues to see any music at, especially Fish. Have you been to Deer Creek, or what are kind of your thoughts on the venue?
I went to Deer Creek. I think it was Deer Creek because I used to go. My parents, when I was a real little kid, I think in the late '80s, were big Jimmy Buffett fans. So they would often go see Buffett at Deer Creek, kind of like in the. I think I went the first time to Deer Creek when I was young, like 9 or 10, maybe, to see Jimmy Buffett. Okay. And then I remember like this girl named Megan. She was like a girl I really wanted to date in high school. And she, it was my sophomore year of high school. And she was like, hey, I have an extra ticket to see Dave Matthews Band at Deer Creek. So I got to go with like my dream crush I think it was the summer of '98. So a year after this is the first time I kind of went as a grown up. Yeah. But and that was so fun. I mean, it was, because it was, it's so wild where Noblesville is, because I grew up like maybe 2.5, 3 hours north of Noblesville. But when they let out shows at Deer Creek, maybe it's changed now, but there was just one country road that you exited out of. And it was insane that this giant, like magical and mythical venue was just in a cornfield somewhere, like middle of nowhere.
Well, I love go ahead.
I also refuse to acknowledge that it has a new name. I guess it has a new name, and it's
Deer Creek forever.
Deer Creek.
It's always Deer Creek. I don't even want to think. I was like, I saw a show and I was like, who? Maybe Dead & Co. were playing in Indiana. I was like, where is this venue? And I was like, and my brother said, that's wireless. Oh.
I feel like that and Great Woods more than any other venue have gone through corporate name changes that there's no reason for it. These places are like, they're known as Deer Creek. They're known as Great Woods. They should stay that way. Exactly. They haven't changed Alpine Valley. They haven't changed SPAC. There's no reason for this, but
Hartford, Connecticut, it's always going to be
the Meadows.
Yeah. Merriweather never changed.
So I went to Deer Creek once in 2010 to see Fish, and I think the thing that struck me the most about it is how normal the venue looks, but you walk in and there's like this immediate mystique no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever 100%. Been to Alpine Valley?
Well, I was going to go. I was going to somehow buy a plane ticket last summer for Ruby Waves night. And I was trying to find a ticket day of to go to that show. And I obviously couldn't find a way from, I think I was going right into a tour or something, but it was a show I should have figured out how to get to for sure. And they played Eraserland that night too. I think they played the night
break, I think, right? Or pre-show?
Or pre-show.
Yeah,
they played Eraserland. And like, I could have been there.
They played Eraserland at the Anastasia Band show in New Haven, Connecticut, which was maybe like a week after we last had you on the show. I had friends that went. They were like, Dave, that guy who was on the show, they played his record like before and after the gig.
They played it in Philly at BB&T. That's another one that's always that was the Tweeter Center.
Yes.
I think it was the East Center when it opened in 1995. I saw the Steve Miller Band my summer.
Yeah.
And then the Tweeter Center, Susquehanna Bank.
Yeah. And now I think it's BB&T.
Right.
But yeah, that was such an icing on a cake of a really cool summer of listening to the shows to find out that they were playing it. I mean, that's kind of top of the mountain. I mean, but I am curious, would you know who curates the like set break music, and especially, is it the band or
Julia Mordaunt, right?
I think that's who it is. Yeah, because he reached out.
I think she's like a creative director at the organization. Like she has some role in the Fish org, and she's the one. She does like Spotify playlists with everything that they play pre and post show, and it's got like tons of like awesome records on there.
Yeah, because even I saw Tab now. I saw in January. I got to see Tool, then Trey in the same week in Austin, and it was the greatest. But even this the music, the how whatever mix they were playing at Tab was just awesome again. And I'm hearing songs I've never heard before. I'm just like, yeah. If I knew how to do the internet better, I could find these songs somewhere. But it was nice in the moment, though.
Deer Creek, isn't it somewhat notorious in Dead Lore? There are a lot of really good shows.
Yes.
Dead played in the 90s, but in 1995, that's where they had the gate crash and they played the show with the lights on. And then the second night, they ended up canceling the show because of because they didn't have the police presence. People like drove down the country road and there was a sign that said like, sorry, show's canceled.
Yes.
Because that was the 1995 tour from hell.
Well, that was when Bobby wrote the letter to the fans, right?
Right. Yes.
I mean, this is probably the case for any place where the Dead would have played concerts often, but Indiana had amazing acid like available to it, and there was always access to good acid in the 90s and stuff, and there was all these people that had it. I guarantee, because of Deer Creek, it was an entire ecosystem that was built around it, of this state that like it was easier to get acid than it was to get like an eighth of weed or something at the time. So, but Rated R, Beyond the Pond podcast.
It's pirate radio. It's all right.
Glad I clicked not suitable for kids when I set this up. So let's jump into the show here. We want to talk quickly about kind of 8-10-97, what was happening at this show at the time, what was happening on this tour at the time, because it's a really interesting show and it's a really fascinating tour, summer 1997. For anyone who's tuning in, I've got to imagine that you have listened to, if not all of this tour, then most of this tour. But anyone who's rough around the edges with it, we'll talk a little bit about it here. But with regards to August 10th, 1997, this comes towards the end of Phish's just revolutionary summer 97 tour. This is the third stop at Deer Creek in a row. They did 95, 96, 97, and they play arguably their best show to that point, although many people ride for the 1996 second night that was released as a live Phish show. That would be Dave. It's a bit more of a pure Phish show. I'm a bit more of the abstract experimental wing of Beyond the Pond, and so I love this one. But more so, the band sought to fuse in this show an old school set list in set 1 with deep and heavy jams in set 2, fusing this kind of archetypal summer 97 jam sound with some of their most beloved classics that gives you this very weird and, I would argue, excellent show all around.
I mean, it starts off with it opens with Runaway Jim. Not so much like a rager, the song.
Bathtub Gin.
Yeah, Bathtub Gin.
We're live.
Jim. We're very live. It's kind of a more mellow take on Bathtub Gin. I mean, this was before the Great Went Gin, so it kind of hadn't become the big C major rager that it like would become. And then you go from there, goes into Sparkle being Sparkle. Nice 12-minute Down with Disease. Doesn't ever go type 2. Stays in like a good type 1 rage. Almost kind of like a drawn-out version of the December 1st, 95 one that we like a whole lot.
Yeah,
and
it's fast too. It's like,
yeah,
it's relentless in its pursuit. I love
Yes.
And then you get Dirt, which only been around for like a month, because that was one of the songs that premiered at the tour opener, right?
Yeah, that came, I think it was premiered in Europe, but came out in America at the Virginia Beach show.
Right.
That first set where they play like 5 new songs in a row and then play Bathtub Gin, and Trey starts chanting USA, USA. Because they had it was their first show in America in 6 months.
But definitely, I mean, probably the highlight of this set, I know it was released in Live Bait number 12, was the Split Open and Melt.
Yeah.
Which just, it goes very, very bonkers around 10 minutes. I guess Fishnet says that there's a full-on jam on the King Crimson song Lark's Tongues and Aspic Part 2, which I haven't listened to recently. But I mean, to me, this part, it just sounds like a bunch of little bugs crawling all over you.
Yeah.
But awesome.
Like the 14-minute mark, right around like 13, 14 minutes in. I don't know if that's when they were deep into the King Crimson thing, but there's this like you said, like a fizzy buzz, and like bugs jumping around, and then it just like explodes. Like this might have been my favorite part of the whole show. Like I just think it was just insane.
Well, it's Split Open and Meld is one of those songs that it can be really straightforward in a lot of ways, and just like rock and kind of like melt your face off as like a set closer or a show closer. But this to me is on par with only a couple other versions as being just like it pushes out there in such a weird way. For this song in particular, December 4th, 99, December 31st, 99, July 22nd, 03, also from Deer Creek, August 15th, 04, July 6th, 2013 from SPAC, and November 2nd, 2018 from Vegas. Those 6 versions are in conjunction with this. I don't think there's anything weirder that has happened within Split Open and Melt than those versions where they take the idea of the song and just distort it as much as possible within the jam.
I was at the July 6, 2013 one, and I made the mistake of going to the bathroom early because I wanted to get a jump on set break. So I heard all the best parts inside the Porta-John. So it was really distorted.
Oh no.
Like, oh, all right, I fucked up. I'll get the tape. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, here's a question I have though, and this is coming from like a somewhat novice, but who in the band? Okay, 2 questions. Who in the band likes to get weird the most? And my second question is, who is the best at getting weird when it's actually happening?
I think it's Paige that pushes them always in a very strange direction. I think that
that's what I hear.
He throws a keyboard, like he goes to a keyboard that's going to add some strange noises, and Trey always seems to respond with that. In terms of who is the best at getting weird, oh man.
Certainly, I mean, Mike, he's got his array. He's got the power drill. He's got the fight bell. He's got the snazzy dress. I mean,
when they're in a weird moment, especially in 3.0, and Mike hits the like envelope filter and like just, I think that's what he's hitting when the whole stadium or the whole arena just like erupts in this bass swell. Like that's always a moment where you know that, oh yeah, the Taurus. That's always a moment where you know that like the band is all locked in, and it's kind of a reminder that this is a hug from the band in a very weird hug.
Yeah, I mean, well, those Taurus pedals, like if it was during this time, they'd be vintage. They'd have to be, but you can run those to the subs especially an amphitheater, and you can get like earth-shattering low out of those. Like just I saw Sigur Rós at the Mann Center like maybe 10 years ago, and they have a song that on record just has this like ungodly like low sound that's just like, it sounds like a dragon awakening from an iceberg or something. And so but when that song started, I was like, oh, there's no way they're going to be able to make that sound that powerful. And then they did it, and the entire amphitheater just like, I think everybody just sat down, like they couldn't handle it.
It just shakes everything. It's unreal, man.
When I think of like Taurus pedals and synthesizers, I always think to like Rush's Xanadu, like if they were doing like the mid 70s.
Yeah.
That like the Geddy Lee pedals and the synths, and that's certainly some of the weirder stuff, especially with Page's synthesizers. Like the past 2 years, his rig, it's just been awesome.
It's
Trey's
insane.
acknowledged it. Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's an entrance point anymore for him. Like, I don't even, like, I wonder if one of the, but he's enclosed now, and they just keep getting more and more choice. Like, I actually want to try and find a picture of his most recent rig. I haven't.
I mean, the sounds that he incorporated, I think it was right before the Baker's Dozen was when it was the last time he really re-upped it. Because if you listen to 2016 versus 2017, when they were doing the Baker's Dozen, there's a lot of more longer jams because they were intentionally jamming at that point in time, trying to put themselves in position to be able to do no repeats across 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, they needed to push their songs out with a little bit more seamlessness, with a little bit more urgency. And Page, especially on so many of those Baker's Dozen jams, comes in with some sort of new keyboard change, and it just sparks this idea for Trey or for Mike, and the band's just gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I always view, especially if it's a true keyboard player, synthesist, or however you want to call them, like I always view the best approach, like with Oaks, or, you know, when I make music or other bands, is when the keyboard player kind of becomes the ocean in which the rest of the band floats on. And totally, like when it came to Baker's Dozen, like that, like you have so much more, you can set a culture and a mood, like you can go so much further with a keyboard rig. Even with Trey, like there is still like a limit to the palette of a guitar, unless you start going like Bobby's MIDI, like late 80s kind of thing, but nobody necessarily wants. I kind of like it's endearing, but
I love it. But I think that the technology has in 30 years leapt forward in ways that it would sound very dated coming from Trey, although I would love to see a tour.
I'd love to see it happen once.
Yeah.
Just like a I love it because it was so genuine. Like, my guitar can sound like a saxophone. Well,
play bird song and it sounds like a flute.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So continuing with set one here, we've got the last Bye Bye Foot until November 29th, 2019, 705 shows. I know I'm in the abject minority here, but I love this song. I think it's like one of the sweetest Fish songs ever written. Fishman's voice fits this song so well. And I would do anything for this song to be more in the rotation. I love it.
I'd be happy with once every 10 shows. Sure. You know, make it a treat.
I just feel like Fishman showing emotion in a song like this is a good thing for Fish. I'm into it. I feel like I understand why in 1997 they stopped playing it, but like 2020 Fish, I think could do it a lot better.
Especially now that he is like 5 or 6 kids.
Yeah, right.
He's a family man. He's got a lot of kids.
Yeah, man.
I thought it was beautiful.
Was that your first time hearing that song, or did you heard that before, Tim?
I don't think so. I mean, it may be in passing. I mean, I've told this before, I think our last conversation, but I don't know my own song titles. So like, I can't like, I think I know the full track list to Siamese Dream. And other than that, I don't think I could. But so, yeah, I may have heard it before, but this was especially, I thought I like it when like Fish sounds like, you know, they sound like an indie rock band kind of. Right. And I love that with Billy Breathes or Dirt. Like, it sounds like, you know, it would be this great way to like a Pavement fan or something. Like, yeah, just hear this. It sounds really good. Like, it's.
Well, yeah, to that point, it sounds almost like a Yola Tango song to me.
That's
like a very
it.
quiet, like
100%.
Georgia song, Yola Tango song. And
Yeah, Georgia could
100%.
sing that.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When did Trey get in the pavement? Was it like 97? He started talking about pavement in every interview. And then
Really?
I know, yeah, there was a time in the late 90s where he couldn't stop talking about Steve Malkmus. And then Bryce Goggin, who produced Bright in the Corners, ended up producing Farmhouse in 2000, I think. And then they covered Gold Sounds one show in like 1999.
Yeah, July
Wow.
21, 99, they play
Yeah.
Gold Sounds out of nowhere. They don't play it very well.
No.
Fish doesn't have Fish can be sloppy, but they can't be pavement sloppy. Like that's an art, and Fish has a hard time without like shagginess. I don't know. It's a prog band playing pavement is I don't think it's meant to happen.
Yeah, but Pavement probably sold like 35,000 copies of like Crooked Rain because Trey like talked about
Yeah, probably so thankful for
it.
So set one closes with one of the most incredible Harry Hoods ever.
Yes.
This is such a unique version. It moves into this very dimly lit melodic space that's atypical to really any other Hood that I've heard. It's still just as gorgeous as your standard Harry Hood, which I say the word standard in quotes because I would take a standard Harry Hood as like my last meal type of thing. But
Yeah.
I can't recommend this enough. I want to quote our close friend of the pod, Ben Greenfield at Guy Forget OPT, who loves this version. He noted that the subtle chord shift from Mike pushes the jam into a very new, emotionally powerful space, and Trey just then pounds it through the goalpost, which incidentally is the exact same formula that made the Went Gin happen just 7 days later at the Great Went when they play one of the best bathtub gins ever.
I thought that's such a good point too. Like it felt emotional. I mean, I think Harry Hood's my favorite Fish like vehicle of where it could go. It's what I always look for. And you're right though. There was something like maybe because the world is an emotional time right now, I'm extra sensitive to something, but this Hood jam was like, it didn't like lift me on like a unicorn to the heavens like it does sometimes. It was more of like it had a lot more weight to it that like got to me in a really good way, but it may have been one of my favorites I've ever heard.
You're right. Like most Harry Hoods, like they bring you up to this like heavenly space. This was
exactly.
This was so good. What did you think of this, Dave?
I think it's great. I mean, I like certainly the last 5 minutes. It doesn't go full type 2, but there are some subtle chord changes. There might be a brief modulation, but kind of it's more measured. It isn't like the peak ecstasy. It's not like 1994, 95, where it's like the runaway train going down a hill. It's a slightly more mature take on it, but it's very good. It's subtle. It's like a little extra.
Yeah.
It's like, to use like sports cliches, it's the little extra sprinkle, a little, goes the extra mile.
But that was a huge set one though. That was gigantic. Like
you have 5 all-time classic Fish songs played in 90 minutes. Like Gin, Disease, Split Up in a Melt, Harry Hood, and I'm blanking on another one probably, but it's a set that like you normally especially at this point in Fish's career catch like maybe 3 of those songs in a show.
Yeah.
But to get all of those in set 1 is just unreal. And then, you've got these new songs kind of scattered in. It's like Sparkle as well. There's Billy Breathes, there's Dirt. But to get these like big songs and really great versions of Split Up in a Melt as well as Harry Hood.
Yeah. I mean,
I love this set.
I think it's crazy how it is such a stop and go type of thing with your huge vehicles and then just back to like Dirt or Bye Bye Foot where you just like, and then they'll just like jump right back into it, which is because is there 4? How many songs? I can't see the track length. I got to bring up that. But there was some beasts in the first set.
Yeah, I mean, Bathtub Gin is probably about 12 minutes. The Hood is around 14. The Split almost goes like 18, 19
18?
minutes.
Yeah.
That's the thing is
12
like
minutes.
it's a jammy first set as well. It's not like they're just going through the motions and just playing one song after another.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely not Summer 2011. I'll give you that.
What would a typical set one be in 2011?
Summer 2011, probably a typical set one would have
14 or 15 songs.
Yeah, 13 or 14 songs, none above 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Kind of just like stacked together like a cord of firewood in no particular order.
Yeah.
It would 9 times out of 10 it would end with like Run Like an Antelope.
Well, I mean, that's a good point. Like this is while it's a classic show or classic set list, it's a very jammy experimental show, which is a really good segue into the second set, which is essentially just one long jam. There's songs in there. It's not wholly free form and experimental, but really what the band is doing here is pushing themselves to embrace the sonic exploration that's defined the entirety of 1997 within a single set. I feel like the only comparisons to this are the 3 Amsterdam shows that were played in both February and July of 1997, and the show from, I think it's Marseille, France, July 10th, 1997, where they're just like throwing the entire rule book out the window and they're just playing, really. And they're songs, but they're just going on stage and playing.
Yeah.
If not, what was the Amsterdam show for 96? It was like July 12th.
July 12th. That's just weed cookies.
Yeah, it's
space cake.
Yeah, exactly.
It was the first show in Amsterdam and just couldn't handle it.
No. Who could?
You got to be careful with that first Amsterdam
show. What are you guys' kind of general thoughts about this second set here?
The Cities is the best version the Cities ever played. I mean, I don't think that's up for debate. The Cities just goes
from incredible
basic Cities to deep funk, lots of wah, and you get a very thick, almost like shoegaze take on the wah. And then the clouds clear, and then he starts playing like basically like the chorus to Ramble On. So you get like the full sunny Ramble On jam, but this time it would have been dark out. You can see yourself on the lawn looking at the stars. It's kind of humid out. Thinking this is great. I mean, it's almost like Ramble On shot through the Tweezer was at Hartford 2013, October 27th to 2013, that has like what I love to call the like helper dog jam. It's like the helper dog that goes to hospitals and keeps kids calm. It's like that, except it's like Ramble On. And then they go into Good Times, Bad Times, so they're feeling like the Zeppelin. But it's an amazing 23 minutes.
Yeah, Tim, what are your thoughts on this Cities? This is unlike anything I feel like I've heard out of Cities ever. I feel like this is like David Byrne dreamed this up and allowed Fish to play it.
I couldn't believe like I just can't, like, the music I love the most, the least I can describe it. And it's and like that's how I feel like with this Cities. It was I mean, it is like, it's psychedelic is such an overused word, but it comes in those waves that you have those kind of like, you were bathed in some kind of like losing my train of thought, my apologies, but it is truly just like it was like transcendent listening to this and just like getting excited to think like there's still, the ideas are coming and just Trey's tone is so like unachievable in this. Like it's almost, it hurts to listen to because I'm just like, he understands a wah better than, I mean, there's like Jerry Cantrell, I feel like Hendrix, obviously, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Buddy Guy, like, but like the Trey wah tone, it's probably because of the Foley hollow body, but it's just scary to hear how good it is because it's
Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains.
Yeah, Jerry Cantrell.
Okay.
He has a Crybaby wah that is the best wah to buy. He has a signature model, and his wah Jerry Cantrell's wah was really vowely, like ah wow wah, and
well, that's like Man in the Box.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and it doesn't have that full Crybaby range of like a Hendrix. Like the wah is my favorite pedal. Like I love. I use it how you're not supposed to use it sometimes. And Trey does the same thing. And I think I take like McCready Pearl Jam is another wah, like, legend. And I think they both, maybe because they were a younger generation than Hendrix's, they like took the wah into this other whole zone, which was like a little bit more like dangerous and broke more rules. And I've sat for hours trying to dial in like the frequency range, and it is not achievable.
One thing I want to ask you, you're talking about the like transcendence of this jam. And one thing that I always take away from this jam is, and this is a huge part of what made summer 97, fall 97, and basically through the first hiatus, Fish, was minimalism and this approach of like trying to connect on a very similar plane of music, and there be no leader. It's just these four members who are listening to each other intently and playing off of each other. But, and at that point, like they'd willingly done this, like they knew what they were doing. But I'm curious, as someone who plays a lot of shows and knows, like, when you're jumping up on stage, there's paying customers and there's people who are here to listen to your songs and listen to you as, a musician, what it would be like to just play like essentially a chord for 5 minutes and just letting whatever's happening just ride it out. I'm just curious, like from a musician standpoint, what that's like.
You have to, I think, like I tried to jump into it sometimes too early.
Okay.
And it felt selfish when I started doing it at the beginning, because I was kind of like, this was like maybe 7, however long ago, 6 years ago, like kind of towards the end of Heel, we started playing longer and longer. And I think it was more selfish. And I realized like doing things like what Fish does with cities and like, like that split open thing, like you have to earn that, and you have to earn, like, I wouldn't want to see, and I don't know many bands that I wouldn't want to go see a band do that unless it was Fish, because they earn that. It's like Picasso could paint beautiful, perfect, realistic portraits, and he earned the right to go into all the different, evolutions that he did. But like for Oaks, at least, like when we first started doing it, I don't think I knew what I was doing, and now it's become like exactly what you said. Like we'll take a song like JM, and we were just in Europe and Fish played the Abbé in Brussels, right? When they on the 97.
Yeah.
That's where we just played in Brussels, same place. And there is something magic. I was listening to that show when I was gonna play the Abbé, but we did a JM that just didn't become it wasn't a song anymore. It was like this complete, like it became this interconnected beast between the fans and the audience and us. And it was just like, by the end of it, it was the most, it's the closest I ever got to maybe thinking how Fish feels when they play a decent show.
I love that you use the phrase earn it, because without naming names, my problem with the non-younger Fish crop of jam bands is that they try to play for like a song for 35 minutes every night, and they haven't earned it. And I'm not into it, because there's no soul. They don't have the songs to back it up. When you get to the point with Fish, when you have the skill level and you have the songs, and you can start doing the rotation jam we're going to talk about.
And it's just amazing to me that they are doing that in ticketed venues that hold as many people, maybe not like the Taylor Swifts of the world, or maybe, but that is the top .1% of touring size bands in the world, and they are doing whatever they want. Like, that's like the last time I saw them in Philly, I just was like, there's 20-some thousand people here, and we're witnessing them just break every rule and have a blast. And
Yeah.
it's why it's addictive to me, because it feels like the last bastion of chaos and like true anarchy and like, you know, free will in the music industry, you know, because it's just like, and it's bigger than anything else, so it really doesn't matter. It's just like they can do it.
Well, and to both of your points, I mean, just to like take a step back and put this into larger context, like from an earned it standpoint, one of the things that will always fascinate me about Phish was they were jamming like crazy in 1986, 87, 88, and they stopped and they focused for 4 years on tightening their show, presenting basically a variety show every night where you got composed pieces, you got big rock peaks, you got a Fishman song, you got, you know, a jam, if you will, and Mike song and You Enjoy Myself and Tweezer. But for the most part, you were getting this like variety style of Phish. Probably the closest to that since then was like 2009, 10, 11. A lot of those shows were very heavy on the variety aspect. And then they figured out that they could jam really well around 92, 93, and it starts to build upwards in the 94, and it completely peaks in 1995. So much so that they walked off stage on December 31st, 1995, and had some very clear choices to make. One of which was be done with this, like we've peaked on our style and our sound, or reinvent ourselves. And for me, my favorite thing that any band that climbs that mountain ever does is the complete reinvention. And if it works, it's so fascinating. And so here you are now 2 years after that, and they can just play whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
Because they've done it and they've reinvented their entire sound and their entire style. And you get this entire second set that's just a testament to everything that the band was doing in 1997.
It's also really generous. Like, I just, that's what and that's another reason, like that's on the masthead of my Phish love. It's like, this is an incredibly generous set for a band to give their fans, like that deep into a year that they have been back and forth, and you know, like, yeah, it's a lesson. That's kind of like why I think some people are like hesitant to like acknowledge how important Phish are. Yeah. Because then they would have to acknowledge also the fact that a lot of the bands they herald don't deserve that level, but they've somehow satisfied the cool factor. And it's like, if you acknowledge how good Phish actually is, how generous, how like giving of a band is, and how talented of a band is, you have to then re-question a lot of other shit that you've tried, these walls that you've built up in Cool World, and then you kind of have to tear them down again.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think also, like, to your point, like digging deep, I remember one of the actually like clear-minded and fascinating moments at Coventry was when Trey was thanking specifically crew members who he said, without what these guys do from a sound standpoint, we don't do what we do, because we have to hear each other in the moment. There can't be a delay. I can't lose Phish. I can't lose Page. Like, I have to hear them as this is happening. And without that focus on their larger technological production, this band doesn't exist. And that to me is a huge accomplishment of from their standpoint as a band that basically built themselves up.
Yep. 100%.
So moving from the cities and the Good Times, Bad Times completely leaves Good Times, Bad Times behind. I don't even know if on like How the West Was Won, you're hearing this kind of Zeppelin play Good Times, Bad Times, but you get a very demented rotation jam. This is the 4th official rotation jam that's ever been logged.
It's fucking crazy.
Fucking crazy. The video Like Trey's just like standing up at Fishman's kit. Mike's playing his guitar. I think Paige and Fish are on the keyboards at one point. This really allows the band to experiment deeper into the sonic linear musical communication that defined their reinvention. Of note, this is more than likely the segment of the show that led the band to get accused of pissing in their audience's ears at the Rolling Stone review in 1997. Because if you're walking into the show as just like a music critic and you see a band who clearly every one of them are fantastic at their own instruments, picking up each other's instruments, I can see how a critic would say like, fuck you guys. But I love this.
But if that critic was at the show if that critic actually went to the whole show, which you never know, they might slip in for,
That's a good point.
They slip in during set break and then, they hear let's say they hear the half of Cities and then a Led Zeppelin song and then they're playing other people's instruments. They're like, what the fuck is going on right now? Because they probably missed step one. I guarantee you they didn't see step one.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
I think this is it's not my favorite segment of Fish. It's I appreciate the effort and I'm glad that they did it, but to me it kind of just sounds like the high school jazz band screwing on their instruments while someone's trying to play the beat to Rift, because it's got a very like the drumming sounds like Rift, the song. And meanwhile, I guess Mike takes somewhat of like a piano solo towards the end. There's the Paige theremin solo for 5 minutes. Like, I think if you were there and on the right kind of droogs, you probably had like a religious experience. But listening back on headphones, I'm like, all right, it's
well, it does feel like, have you ever, I'm left-handed and I played basketball. I still play basketball a lot, but there is something kind of fun to have them be. It makes you appreciate how good they are to hear. It's like sometimes Larry Bird would shoot with his left hand just to challenge himself and make a player feel even more dumb for trying to guard him. But this rotation jam does. All you have to do right now is try and shoot a basket with your opposite hand, and it kind of has that feel to it. This is so unsettling in a way.
Well, and it's wild to think a week later they're playing at the Great Went, their music festival in Limestone, Maine, and at that festival they engaged in a art project between them and the audience, where the audience painted a bunch of wooden sculptures and they all stacked them up, and then the band painted their own and they passed it across the audience. And Trey makes a note during that, as the piece of art is going out to burned all together, that there's this communal, there's this conversation happening between the band and the audience at all times. And you think a week later, part of that, or a week earlier, I should say, part of that conversation is often testing the audience and saying, how much are you guys actually willing to take from us? How far can we push it before you guys push back? And how can we challenge the way that you guys hear music? And I'm really thankful that we have a band that can play, to your point, 20,000 person venues and play that kind of music.
Yeah. I think Fish, one of my favorite Iggy Pop quotes ever is and I use this as my own example, I think sometimes in my life, but he talks about how there's Dionysian and I forgot a more traditional version. So Dionysian is the wild version. And but he said he's explaining Iggy Pop's music, but he's there's some sculptors that go out and they take granite or marble and they carve this perfect phallus, just perfect, and they grab it, it'll be there forever. You can probably still see it thousands of years later. And then there's Dionysian, who will build that same phallus out of paper mache and just burn it in a field, And I think that's Fish is definitely more on that side of it. Just it just it's this pagan, deep, rooted earth thing, and then they just burn it at the end of it. And that's part of why you get stuff like rotation jam and stuff like we're just burning the phallus right now. That's what we're doing.
Right. No, that's a really good point. That's
piston ears and burn the phallus.
I think this is
there you go.
These are the origins of the song Meat Stick, I believe. So out of the rotation jam, because they're rotating in 1997, they wrote a couple of songs that were all based on this idea of rotating instruments, one of which was Walfredo, that has been played a few times since, and Rock-A-William, which is here in its first ever stateside performance. It's 5th all time, and the last time that the band has ever played this song. I will ride for this song in that it allowed the band to experiment even further during their most creative year to date. Even if the results are less than excellent, I really kind of like the chorus of Rock-A-William, the like spookiness of Rock-A-William. And it just, the way it comes out of the rotation jam and fits the like overall 4 o'clock in the morning, the drugs are kind of wearing off, but still working a little bit mood of this set. It's the best.
That static electricity moment that does carry into Bowie too. Like
100%.
Like it's great how like I'm looking at like I'm just looking at set 2 over and over again, and like it's just one song, it's just one awesome idea. And you mentioned that earlier, so like anything like Rock-A-William, I don't know, obviously I'm not super familiar with that song, but I wouldn't even care if it was like a super bad song, because then that just would make like the eventual Bowie feel even better.
Right.
It might be the longest Bowie intro of all time. It's like it keeps.
Oh my God.
The Bowie intro is so long, I get like antsy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like 9
you
minutes.
Keep like feeling like you're hearing Trey do the like scratch that
He's
lets Fishman know.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't.
There's if you go on the Fishnet and read the Fishnet reviews of this show, there was a review from one guy who was at the show, and he thought the entire second set was like a big intra-band struggle. Like,
oh wow!
To play,
on this review by Nico Barrett.
Yeah, and I guess he says like with the Bowie, Trey made it 9 minutes because he was pissed off and wanted to like get back at the other guys. And Page was shooting darts. I mean, I don't know, perhaps, but it's. I guess I actually haven't watched the video. But is there a point where Page is like hovering over Fish's drum kit, like glaring at him, saying like, I mean, not Page, Trey, or.
But, wow, that's a good.
I don't recall that, but it's interesting to think like the context of this again with the Great Went being a week later. They play that first set on August 16th, and by all accounts, it's a fine Fish set. There's nothing really wrong with it. It's got some really great moments. And on the Bittersweet Motel DVD, they walk off stage, and Trey just goes, "We played a bad set," and there's like clearly intra-band aggression happening. They're like working through some shit and stuff that you rarely ever get to see from these guys. And it's interesting to think about that with like the context of a week later them playing this show, and it's so challenging where either they all on the same page and all in on the experiment, or were they just like too deep at that point and couldn't like say, hold on, all right, we got to stop this thing. They just kept going.
I had to rewatch Bittersweet Motel. I haven't had the DVD, but I haven't watched it in like 10 years. I would be very curious to see like Fish towards the end of 1.0 versus where they are now.
That is like the most reliable DVD that I own. I can throw it on. That's like the Goodfellas of rock documentaries for me. I could just put it on at any point and I'm sucked in.
That and like Pavement, Slow Century. That's another good one.
I just love Bittersweet because it's like they're playing places that are very dear to my heart. Like Paradiso,
like in Europe?
Like
Barcelona.
Those, I know all those streets because in Strand of Oaks world, like we actually tour a lot I have a Dutch band over there. So I spend a lot of time in the Netherlands, and Belgium is very dear to me. So like just those, it seems like they're focusing in a lot of those and Bittersweet with that. And that is just, and it's great because I talked to like my Dutch band, they're younger than me. They're like 20, maybe 25. And this is, they may not, and especially they're European, but I put on Fish in the tour bus or in a tour band like a few years ago, and my guitarist said, "Oh, that sounds a lot like the guitarist from Oysterhead." and I went like, "Yeah, it's Fish." And he's like, "Do you mean Trey Anastasio?" And I'm like, "Yes." And then that makes sense because in Europe, I'd imagine Primus, the Police, I'd imagine the translation, especially to younger listeners, probably the gateway is Oysterhead over, perhaps Fish.
Yeah, I feel like, it's a really good point because I feel like Fish had they didn't tour as much as they could have in Europe when they were younger. And I think now the production would be really difficult to get over there. It kind of would have to be stripped down, and what they were traveling with from like a light rig standpoint, from a stage standpoint, I think was a little bit easier in Europe in 97 and 98 for them. But I feel like in another world, they could have been a huge European band.
100%. The Dead were revered as close as like some jazz artists in a lot of those countries. And
right.
I think it's difficult for bands, like you kind of want to try and raise it. If let's say you're a band and things are happening in America and Europe or Australia or Japan, you kind of want it to be a straight line in which everything is kind of close, raising together. Because if you're like Fish and America is doing, like Paradiso only holds, I think, 1,200 people.
Right.
And they're playing that in 97, that's, and I heard that a lot of people at those European shows were just Americans that wanted an experience to see them in such an intimate setting.
Right. Yeah. And travel around Europe with the band, like
exactly
June, early July in Europe following Fish sounds like paradise.
And then they played, didn't Fish, no, that was years before. What was they played Roskilde or something?
They played that in 97, but I think they also played it in 92 and 96.
They played it early on, and
I think Santana?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in Denmark. But what's great is I think Europeans would, like you said, I think they would really, really enjoy it. They would love, King Crimson is revered, Rush is revered, and Frank Zappa probably played his biggest shows in some of those countries. So it is kind of strange, but I think the problem is you can't, even their Fish is as big as you can get, so you can't really scale down that.
I think there was a part in the Fish book, the Fish Coffee Table book, where Trey talks about touring Europe, and he was in a diner, and a Frank Zappa cover band rushes over to him and starts singing City of Tiny Lights. Just like the Zappa Fish connection was strong in Europe.
Yeah.
Well, what do we have? Just briefly, I think we should run through some of the really good Fish shows in Deer Creek and Fish 1.0, which would have been before the first breakup.
Yeah, I wanted to go through this because, Fish has played Deer Creek a number of times since the year 2000. But I don't know if it's lost its luster for Fish. They don't play it every year like they used to. They don't play multi-night runs as much as they used to. They played a couple really good runs in 2003 and 2004. But the idea of Deer Creek and Fish really is born out of late 1.0. And they arrived there for the first time. They played June 19th, 1995, just a couple weeks before the final Grateful Dead shows at Deer Creek, as well as the final Grateful Dead shows ever. And they play a massive Bowie in the summer of Bowies. I've said this before. I will say this again. I will say it right now. I would do anything for Fish to give us just one David Bowie, like a summer 95 Bowie, because everyone that summer just cracks your brain open. You see the the dark matter, whatever, coming out of your brain, just oozing onto the road in front of you. It's unbelievable how they approached this song and just allowed the like breakdown in the song to just open them up into the cosmos, almost like a drum space type segment. You get that so good. 1995, David Bowie's. Ahead to 96, you've got August 12th. It's got a really good split open and melt. August 13th was featured on Live Fish 12. It's got a really fantastic summertime set one, really great mic song, all caps mics.
August 11th, 1997, massively enjoy myself. This was the one day after this show we're talking about here. They did not slouch. August 2nd, 1998, they did a Manteca-style possum jam of a source into a very big ghost. And then one of my favorite shows that we always talk about, August 3rd, 1998. Incredible show, Big Haley's Huge Gumbo. And, of course, that's the show where they open with the Smashing Pumpkins Rhinoceros. Nailed it.
I know a lot of people who were at that show.
That's a really great front to back show that I mean, I'm a big proponent, and getting into the next show here, I'm a big proponent of a Deer Creek box set that has not yet been released but should be released. There's so many great 1.0 shows that should be featured from Deer Creek. That August 3rd, 98 show, I would love to hear that in full soundboard quality, or see a video release of the like 10 fans that were freaking out during Rhinoceros.
Wouldn't they have to get like Corgan's permission for like an official release for that?
Probably, and he's never going to do that.
No.
Well, no, Corgan and Trey just took a picture together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they took like a buddy picture, I think, together.
This is like 16-year-old me is.
Here's a mind-blowing thought.
Yeah.
Like, here, if you want to see me just kind of like Indiana Jones space melt. So Billy's like 10 minutes. Do you know the song Starla off of Pisces Iscariot?
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm,
it's my favorite Pumpkins. It's my favorite guitar solo he has. Could you imagine Trey just coming out like mid Starla, getting along? That would be holy shit. I'm just imagining it in my head right now. God.
Well, I think it's a huge accomplishment that they played a Rhinoceros, because going for a Pumpkins ballad, I don't think was the first thing anyone would have ever expected. Off of Gish, right, yeah. And in 98, like, you know, it's the summer of covers that year. Like, come out and play like a sloppy thrown together version of Zero. Everybody goes crazy.
Yeah.
With the Pumpkins, you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. But like to play Rhinoceros and like to really nail the vocals of it, like it sounds like that hushed Corgan vocal style that you got in the early 90s that I just absolutely love.
I mean, is it true though, or is this just like street rumor or whatever, that there somehow Trey caught wind of a fan who had passed away and Gish was in the tape deck of his car, and like that might be. I know exactly what you're talking about. In the Farmer's Almanac, one of the writers for that, one of the guys who compiled it, wrote about going to that show, and his brother had committed suicide, I think, a year or so earlier, and was listening to Rhinoceros, and he went to the show, had not yet like fully processed gone through the whole grieving process, and Fish plays Rhinoceros and he just lost it. And then they play a 20-minute Haley's, and Haley's is one of those songs that, like, if you're ever going to smile at a Fish show, it's going to be during Haley's. Like, I smile a lot at Fish shows, but like Haley's just like boom, instantly.
I also heard that there's a rumor that before Fish came to Deer Creek, Billy Corgan was doing like a radio interview, and someone mentioned Fish, and he's like, "Bah, the Pumpkins can like jam harder than Fish."
Oh no!
And word got back to Trey, so it was like, "Oh well, all right. Well, here, let's play Rhinoceros."
So jumping ahead 1 year later, my second favorite Fish show of all time. I was not at this show. Yes. 7/25/99. Kevin Shapiro, I always ask you for this. If we have you at this point in time, please release 7/25/99, a soundboard release. I don't know if the whipping post is the issue here, but this show starts out with meat, and then my friend, which fades into my left toe, which then fades into whipping post, and it's Chris Kuroda's birthday, and they sing him a happy birthday and play Mac Super Policeman and play like a huge boogie on Reggae Woman. And then the second set has like just jams all the way through. Huge Birds of a Feather, huge Susie Greenberg.
So jam filled now was Chris Kuroda's birthday? I didn't know that.
Yeah, 725. And then the following night, you get a Down with Disease, and a Fish plays the song Woodstock by Crosby, Stills, and Nash because
nope, by Joni Mitchell.
My apologies.
Made popular by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that correction. We are live.
Yes.
Because Woodstock 99 was happening at the exact same time that Fish was putting on this show.
That's right.
A
little friendlier environment than Woodstock 99.
Yeah. And then 1 year later, 2000, you get the first ever 3-night run at Deer Creek. The first night has, I'm forgetting which night it was. One of the nights has the Return of the Curtain with for the first time since like 1989. But the second night is the Moby Dick Insanity show where they play Moby Dick in and out of every single song in the second set. They call themselves the Fish from Vermont. They play an amazing Drowned in the Choctaw Torture reprise. It's just an outstanding show.
I was going to ask because that was a show with Choctaw Torture reprise,
which apparently came out of like the night before they had a huge fan party, and there was like an inflatable penis at the party, and that's where the Moby Dick gag came from. And Trey was at like 4:00 in the morning, apparently like playing Choctaw Torture reprise just because, and then they just threw it into the show. The next night I read that on the internet somewhere, so it may or may not be true.
I mean, Fish is like supposed to play Deer Creek this summer, right?
I think
so. Deer Creek on the docket?
Yeah, I think Deer Creek was on the docket this year.
Okay.
I think that was one of the places we
had talked about this.
Yeah, we talked about this.
It'd be the first time playing there since 2016, which was an altogether forgettable show. But Fish playing Deer Creek, man. You can't complain about that. And I want to give a shout out to one of our viewers, Ingest, is hanging out with us here. CJ Farrell.
Hey, CJ.
He said we can release a Deer Creek box set after the 1.0 Cumberland County Community Center box set from Portland, Maine. And,
fair.
It's a very fair point. It's a very fair point. So what are our thoughts on just like Fish at Deer Creek, Fish in 1997? Tim, what are your final thoughts here?
Well, I just think the whole idea of the space funk or the minimalism that they were going, like my favorite, like just the thought of like where they were taking it, like obviously Talking Heads are one of my favorite bands too. Like I love krautrock. I love, Fela Kuti, and these like understanding that like jams can become trances at the same time, and you can get like, again, like sometimes you arrive at this place where like the perfect solo is to not play a solo. And and that is just that's why this year is so awesome. I mean, because it is, but it's also, minimalism can be incredibly emotional too, and I think that's why a lot of this whole year, just like it weirdly doesn't get me in as big of like a party move and like sunshine out, but it gets me definitely into more of like a, I'm gonna go on a fucking journey right now. And like one time when I saw Fish, like I was doing whatever, and it was one of those like, it was a set too that I just was gonna sit down, and my wife was listening. She's like, why aren't you dancing? I was like, because I'm taking this shit really seriously right now. Like I am like giving my utmost respect and not dancing right now. Like I am listening right now.
It's true. I mean, and I'm curious, like from your perspective, you said like the kind of emotion of not playing a guitar solo. Like,
Yeah.
can that, you know, I've got to imagine for Trey it was really difficult at times where like the band may not have been sounding at their best, and to not fall back on what their crutch was, which isn't necessarily a crutch when you have like one of the best lead guitarists on the planet. I'm just curious, like what that's like as a live performing artist.
I'm still learning how to play guitar solo, so I don't know if I have any reference point to having a guitar solo actually take away. But you know, I mean it is like, you know, there are things that you unfortunately know as a performer sometimes that could satisfy an audience, but not necessarily elevate an audience.
Sure.
You know, and that is not to say like I will play. I'm not like I didn't major in art rock. You know, I love the idea of a connection and like, you know, like of course I'm gonna play songs that people want to hear tonight. Like I think I would have a difficult time not playing. You know, just for me, like I have some songs that like I get so fucking excited every time I'm gonna start jam. Like I could play that a billion more times, and that's why like when I think of Fish, like I wonder if they still have songs like that they're just like, you know, like I cannot wait to play this tonight. Like, and you know, I know that there's probably, I heard Trey say in an interview once that like they actually have a more difficult time pulling deep into like the more simple structured songs, like Prince Caspian or something that's 3 chords, and there's something that like I just lost track there. But yeah, I mean, I just think it was but it's also good that they didn't keep 1997 going for the next 20 years. Like,
sure,
it was, you know, it was like a really special moment that we have to listen to.
I think one of Trey's quotes behind getting the band back together in 2009, I think he said there was just no way I was going to go the rest of my life without playing You Enjoy Myself with John Fishman. That was that.
Yes, that's amazing.
Right.
That's amazing.
So, Tim, while we've got you here, I mean, you just want to get your opinion on, I mean, what the heck have you been up to in quarantine with all of us? And what do you think touring is going to look like in a few months? I mean, how's it going to affect Strand of Oaks going forward?
I mean, I literally hung up the phone on a friend of mine this week because it was just one of these talks that I've been having where it was kind of like, it's never coming back. It's over. Like it's, you know, it's just, and I might be a person that's living in complete denial, but like I am staying as productive as possible. And everything I do every day is preparing for the time when they come back. Like, and, you know, and this might be a kind of sad realization, but I just cannot imagine a world without like, not only getting the only thing that I'm good at, but like being able to go to shows and like, that's as dark of a scenario. I mean, just in my life, and it's selfish because there's a lot worse things that can happen to people, and we could not have food and all these other real problems. But for me, my lifeblood and living is music. And so but with that said, I am the same guy that has yelled at my neighbors for having a fucking makeshift gym going on with people coming in and out of it. Like, I love and cherish and worship live music so much that I haven't left my neighborhood in, you know, like a month. I haven't seen a person beside my wife because this needs to be taken serious. Because, you know, like, and I don't want to, I have things on the calendar and stuff like, but I really, all I can say is I really hope they happen. Like, and if they can't, I understand, but I just really want them to happen, and for all of us to go back, because maybe the reason why I focus on talking about shows instead of the real issues and bigger point is because if we get to a place as a society where we can safely and responsibly go to concerts again, that means that everything else is that much better too. So maybe that's why I can't wait for live shows to happen, because then I know that there's a handle on this situation. Also, people are back to work. Also, kids are hopefully have school again. And, that's what shows symbolize for me.
That's a really good point. How, kind of in the meantime of everything that's happening right now, as a musician, what are the best ways that people like us at a podcast network that focuses heavily on music as well as music listeners, how is the best way to help musicians during this period in time?
I think Bandcamp, especially not for, certain bands like me, I'm on a label. So the Bandcamp, I think some people get that confused with Bandcamp. If you're on a label, it still goes to the label that you're on,
sure.
And that gets distributed, which is what labels should be doing. But I think Bandcamp is the main way to help out bands that maybe aren't at the level, that they put records out. They might have been going on their first headline run or support run or something like that. And, here's my suggestion. Go find a small band and give them a chance and buy a shirt or buy a record on Bandcamp. But then if you want to buy a bigger band's record that's on a label, buy that fucker from a independent record store. So support the small bands via Bandcamp, where it's very direct. And then if you're going to buy any other form of music, even if it's an inconvenience, if you can do it safely, get it from whatever store is in your town, because
we're going to need those places when this all reopens.
And that's another thing I'm really scared for. I can't imagine my life without certain record store, like Main Street Music in Philadelphia, Waterloo, Indiveneer, Wuxtree, Deep Groove in Richmond. There's just these places that are my home throughout the country. And so if you have that inclination to buy that vinyl, I don't even think Amazon does it, but people don't do this anymore. Go to the internet, type in the record store, go to their actual website, call if there's a number, call to see how can I get a record from you, or if there's an email or whatever. But just now is the time to do that, and because I get scared. I get really scared. I don't drink anymore, but a lot of times I'm still playing in bars, and I have friends that work in bars, and, the entire service industry. But it's if a restaurant closes, there's a good chance another restaurant will open again in some capacity. But if a record store closes in a small town after 40 years of being in business, then that's not something that can just be replaced, by another fusion restaurant, and that's what,
I think about the record shop where I bought Heel was Ka-Chunk Records in Annapolis, Maryland. It was the only record store in the county. And
really?
Yeah. And I went in there on a regular basis, and the guy who owned the place, he did not like fish at all, but because I was a regular customer, he always would stock fish for me. Whenever there was a record store day release, he knew there was something for me. If there was new studio records that came in, I loved the dude. And I don't live in Maryland anymore. I have a few shops out here in Colorado, but I know what you mean. That is the only record store, independent record store in Anne Arundel County in Maryland, which is right next to Washington, D.C. So it's not like there's another one that's going to pop up in that spot next.
I know.
I think Academy Records in New York, in the East Village, have an annex in Brooklyn. I think they're directing people to their, they have a page on Discogs
That's true. Yeah, you can go through Discogs. That's another good way. And just make sure it's not from like a profiteering, like independent source. Like make sure it's from the record stores, because like I'm the same way too. Like I swear like Waterloo always has dub records for me, and then End of an Ear in South Austin, they had, I don't know, have you guys ever heard the band African Head Charge before?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jay Wobble or John Wobble and everything, but they had 4 African Head Charge records at End of an Ear, and I'm like, if this isn't like, I think they got to note that I am the one person that will buy the 4 African Head Charge records here right now. But I love record stores more than like just as much as playing shows. Like I don't like seeing clickbait articles that are like, is this the death knell of record stores? Like, well, fuck, don't write the article about that. Write an article about the record stores, how to pay them money, and like, don't say they're over. Say how we can save it. Like, I hate this way of communicating information now. It's like, don't scare me first, inform me, and actually let's try and make a productive discussion about this.
100%.
This afternoon, I had a weird desire to listen to some 80s Steve Winwood, so I put on a copy of Back in the High Life, his record. Yeah. And my wife's saying, "Where'd you get this?" Like, I don't know. And I pick up the record and I look at it. It's got a tag from Grimey's in Nashville for $3.99. Like, oh, I guess I bought it last time I was in Nashville. So, all right, great.
Yeah.
That's got these, like, the back of that record has these, like, 80 shots of Steve Winwood where he's got these, like, suspenders and he's with a girl smoking a cigarette. He's getting, like, his 80s swerve on.
I mean, like record stores, like one of my favorites, I get all my tattoos done in Richmond, Virginia. My friend Josh Stevens does all my tattoos, and my best friend. But that Richmond has like 2 amazing shops. A third one I forgot the name of that's also amazing, but they've got Deep Groove and Plan 9, like 2 completely different record stores. Like Plan 9 is more experimental punk hardcore, and Deep Groove is like, the guy who runs it is like good friends with Patterson and Cooley from Drive-By Truckers and stuff. But like, I was at Deep Groove once in Richmond and just made this amazing instant connection with the person working there, just talking and having this like amazing. And then like I went into the used bin and like freaked out because they had this band Fulixoid. They're a South American. I think they're from Chile. And they're like the best psych rock band ever. Like but they had the first Fulixoid record there used at Deep Groove. And I was like, holy shit. And I was so pumped. And then the clerk who I just made friends with, he was like, that's from my collection. I just put that in the used collection this morning. And the same guy I'm talking to, record stores. Yeah.
So, on this topic, I think it'd behoove us to recommend a few, like you were saying, Tim, bands that could use a direct purchase at this point in time. Dave, what is your new album that you've been rocking that you would love to promote to our listeners at this point in time?
Okay, just the other day, I think it came out a few days ago. This is new. I think it's the debut album. It might have had like an EP or like a live release before. A California-based band they're called Pacific Range. They sound a lot like the Almonds, like the Dickie Batsled Almonds, like Ramblin' Man, Blue Sky, those types of songs, except kind of with like a slightly off-kilter California appeal. So their new record called High Upon the Mountain. I know I got it directly from their label's website. I think the label is called Curation Records. It might be the first album that the label's put out. You can just Google like Pacific Range and it'll come up, and you can just download the MP3s for like $11 right from the site. I think you can also order the vinyl, but I think the first pressing sold out, and they said because of COVID, it might be a while before they get back in stock. But I might check it out because this is a band I definitely want to hear on vinyl. I mean, anyone.
That's awesome.
It's like off-kilter Almonds kind of meets like California cocaine folk.
I'll take it.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's really
DCF.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a band
Have to give some credit to my good buddy Dave Keaty. I don't know if he's listened. He kind of came up with that phrase to describe some of those bands. I thought it was great. So
Perfect.
yeah, from him.
Yeah, that was a huge. I know Jeff Conklin of Avant Ghetto was pushing these guys a lot over the last couple of months, and
that's where
they're
I first heard of
fantastic.
them.
Yeah, same here. So I'm gonna push the new record by Nap Eyes, Snapshot of a Beginner. This is their fourth record, but I don't know if it's like a product of the time. They should be bigger than they are. This is like lazy Sunday jams from a Halifax group that is exactly what I need right now. And right before all this stuff happened, they were on tour. Riley Walker was opening up for them.
He was playing guitar with them.
Oh, was it? Oh, he was actually playing with them. Oh,
yeah.
And I think it was, from all accounts, it was a really good tour. Unfortunately, they had to split ways as everything kind of went down in March. But if you think like 90s slacker rock here, like Pavement, Sebadoh, and occasionally kind of how Yo La Tango sounds, this is just what I want to hear right now. I feel this in my bones on a day-to-day basis when I get up and I go to shower because I'm going to a desk job, but it's in my house. And
which is still good.
I'm still doing that, but I'm like, what's every day you're like, well, what's the point? And this music just seems to like be encased in my brain right now. And of note, like, this is a band that from a lyrical standpoint have always written very inward looking songs, and it's a big outward push during this record. It's much more focused on kind of the world at large, and it's interesting to hear that commentary clashed with this very lackadaisical but really well done in this style type of music. So highly recommend for all of our listeners here, Nap Eyes, Snapshot of a Beginner. Tim, is there anything that you've been listening to of late? Anything new that you want to?
Oh yeah.
I
have a few.
Cool.
The first is, we just call him the Don, but his given name is Donnie Benet, and he wrote a record called The Don, and it's basically I would say 90% of my time with my wife, or just like doing the yard work or anything, is soundtrack by Donnie Benet. He lives an excellent life. He's a sophisticated lover. He's a man who likes to take care of people with his fine lifestyle. But you think I'm joking until you put it on. It's incredible. But
how's that spelled? Is that like Donnie, like D-O-N-N-I-E?
DONNYBENET.
Okay, Donnie.
He has certain hits like Working Out, Love Online, You're Too Good. Just all you have to do is watch one video. I would say watch the video for Santorini, and you'll understand the Donnie Benet lifestyle. Very serious in that. I kind of the best. But also, we just had when we were in Europe last. My new friend Ella, she opened for us and also sang in Strand of Oaks. Her band's called Squirrel Flower, and she just released a record on Polyvinyl. I Was Born Swimming, and this is the one band where we were talking about, like, she had this great push, this amazing record label, and she was opening for us in Europe in February, and we got to do our tour. And then right as she was starting her first headline tour ever, they had to go home. And this was a time in a career of a young artist where you're there to gather your fans. You're there to gather all of the people that are excited to see you, maybe haven't seen you, and this was kind of her time. And I know she'll be back with a lot of other records, but I just think of what a shame it is that all that work was put into a great record and then you can't finish the tour. So definitely find the records I Was Born Swimming by Squirrel Flower. And then finally, my favorite thing in Austin is there's a joint called Sam's Town Place in very far South Austin. And it's kind of like if you could take how you feel when you're walking around wherever the main part of like a fish show during the bar area, and just the general vibe of people during set break is kind of how Sam's Town Point is all the time. It's just this wonderfully perfect place. But the owner is this guy named Ramsey Midwood, and it's Ramsey with an A, and he's put out records for years. And I kind of feel weird talking about him because I don't want more people to come to Sam's Town so I can still get on the dance floor. But seriously, Ramsey Midwood has the best band in Austin, and they play almost every Saturday night. And just find his records and you'll hear, with the tragedy of losing John Prine, it's time for people to like also recognize there's guys like Ramsey Midwood out there that are carrying the torch of Midwestern weird Americana, but and then there's just probably so many more, but yeah, that's kind of
Squirrel Flower record. I repped that at one point here on Beyond the Pond because
it comes out. It hasn't been released yet. I mean, the episode that's got Squirrel Flowers in the next episode.
I absolutely love that record. I absolutely love that record. I agree with you completely. I wish nothing but the best for her as she is launching her career, if you will, amidst all of this, because that's one of my favorite records of the year to this point.
It's very singular too. It doesn't sound like a lot of peers of bands her age. Like
no,
it doesn't. She did say, I do like okay boomer things. I was quickly felt very old because my Dutch band is very young as well, and I'm just like, I was like, when did I become the grandpa in the music scene? This happened.
Chews you up and spits you out by 37, man.
Yeah, I know. But that's why like I really feel for younger bands right now, because there is that when you first get the attention and you can get those people, like luckily, although it's not like, it's not the great stadiums of the world or whatever to be a Strand of Oaks show, but I am very fortunate to have a fan base that is like, we've been there together for a long time now. And, I have like a family of fans out there, and I'm very fortunate because I've had a few records doing that, but like new bands, they got to find those people, and, and that's what it's good to explore and find that is the problem though. Like I used to know more about record releases and more. I used to know about more records before internet. Like I would know like all of these records because I would go to record stores and see release dates. And I don't know if you were all the same way, but I miss records completely now of like bands that I truly love. I don't know they put out records.
Well, I think there's a lot of noise because there's so much, because you got streaming, you got Spotify, you got every podcast and blog. There's so much noise that sometimes you can get lost in the shuffle. Like we just talked about the new Caliphone record, the first album in 7 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it was out for like at least a month. I'm like, wait a sec. This is a reissue. This is new, like a new record. It just wasn't publicized very well, or there's certain ways to stay on top of things. There's maybe like 5 or 6 blogs I checked regularly, word of mouth, see what like friends are talking about online. I mean, there's one good thing about social media, it's pretty easy to fall in with like-minded people that will introduce you to stuff.
Right.
That's true. I mean, my main source of finding music that I have, like, one of the last places that can still like absolutely blow my mind with something I'd never heard before is if you ever listen to like any of the curated podcasts by Aquarium Drunkard or like
those guys are so
Justin
good.
Gage and Jason Woodbury, like their taste is like so evolved that, you know, and I'm obsessed with dub. I'm obsessed with African funk and African synth music. And, you know, I go to great lengths searching out a lot of this stuff, and they will still floor me with like something I've never heard before. And that's an institution at this point, Aquarium Drunkard.
Yeah. I mean, I credit them and a number of the shows on WFMU as being,
oh yeah, for sure,
over the last like 2 years, taking wherever I was musically and saying, without like, I don't think there was like intentionality behind this. And I think that's the best part, but you know, like inside of myself, hearing this music and saying, okay, I like this. So I have this, so I can piece this together with this. And it allows you to like speak the larger language of music where you may not be getting advertised this, but you know, instantaneous, like this is what I should be listening to.
Yeah. I would say another example that's like so great to have, even in this time of like unlimited information and availability. I still really seek out curation and like, and like anything Numero Group puts out is like, you're going to be just, you feel so safe with Numero Group because you can spin, and sometimes those vinyls are expensive. Like I will feel comfortable dropping like $60 on a Numero Group compilation because I just know it's going to be good. Like,
right.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard of any of the bands on it sometimes. Like,
right.
You know, they did a Minneapolis funk, like pre-Prince Minneapolis funk scene that's just ridiculously good. Like, you know, and they do it as, yeah, it's amazing.
Well, you realize like throughout the course of, I guess you take into, you know, the last 60, 70 years since, you know, rock and roll, the amount of people that figured out how to plug in and record themselves and nobody ever heard of.
Yeah.
Unless you like really dug deep. It's both daunting and incredibly inspiring at the same time.
It's been like Instagram Live this past 4 weeks. People I've never heard of pick up acoustic guitars.
Right.
Some of them are okay. Some.
Yeah. I mean, the one funny thing about me with this age of streaming is, I don't know if I'm actually become more self-conscious of it, but like I was talking to someone about how some of these performers are having a difficulty using their phone mics because their acoustics are louder than their voices. So you're kind of hearing a lot of acoustic. And I was telling my friend, I was like, you can say whatever you want about Strand of Oaks, like bad or good. The one thing you can't say is that I'm quiet. Like I have just a uncontrollably loud voice that it's like, even now I know my wife is like trying to sleep and like 4 rooms away, I just like my neighbors can hear me now. So like I've actually had to struggle with live streams to sing quieter because I like tested out I did a video of me singing and I was like over compressing the microphone on my phone or whatever. So that's an evolving thing for me.
There's a few guys that have been doing it really well. What's his name? Adam Wiener from Low Cut Connie. He's been doing like a really good live stream. He's been great. BJ Barn from American Aquariums did a lot of covers.
Joe Pug is doing some great. One of my best friends, if you know what Joe Pug is, but he's been doing some great streams as well.
Yeah, he's great.
Okay.
Streams. God, couldn't we have found a better word for that? Streams just feels like golden showers or something like that. And Trump in a Russian hotel. Jesus Christ.
Streaming. Oh God.
Streaming.
There's an image.
They should just call them like float shows, like floating shows. Like this is just a floating
show.
Like
exist in the ether. You can just like log in, log out, log in. Yeah.
It's not a stream. Ooh.
All right. Did we do it all?
We got it all.
I had my chair on lock and I forgot because I could have been leaning back this entire time feeling like Could have been lounging by the pond.
Could have been like Donnie Benet.
Oh, I'm telling you, you may think, I promise you, and I want this, I used to be a teacher, so Mr. Showalter's homework is both of you and anyone else listening, let me know. You have to watch at least 2 Donnie videos and listen to the record. And let me know if it changed your life. That's what I'm hoping for.
That's the first thing I'm doing when I get off this call.
It certainly changed mine. It made me a more sophisticated lover, a happier person.
I'm expecting the like most interesting man alive, like the Dos Equis ad campaign from years ago. But okay.
He is. I mean, he's a sophisticated man.
No one understands him like his woman.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much for hanging with us here. This was so much fun, man.
Thanks for picking that show too. That was just a
this is great.
Fantastic listening experience.
I'm so glad we got to do this. Let's do a deep dive again here. We'll pick a perhaps less weird, more high octane. I don't know. Maybe the weird is the right way to go. And we'll just dive off in the deep end of fish with you. I love this. So for everyone who's hanging with us here still, thank you all so much. Health, continued sanity for you, for your family, for your friends. This is a insane time. This is a trying time for all of us. I'm thankful for everyone still doing their part to social distance because it is working apparently, and it is important. So thank you everyone who's doing that. From a Beyond the Pond thing, we don't have a new episode coming out this week. Next Tuesday, April 21st, episode 95 drops. As we've been noting here, we're going to do a bunch of big jam episodes. We've got some more special guests lined up here for the springtime, but we're going to bring you guys a bunch of jams and do kind of a big deep dive off it, showcase some new music. And we'd encourage you guys all to follow Osiris Media for many more live streams coming, plus other shows that are happening. There's a lot happening over in the world of Osiris Media, which is great right now.
We're doing this again next Sunday at April 19th at 9 p.m. TBD. Don't know what we're doing yet. Let us know what you want to watch. Reach out to us. We'll whether it's another show or whether you want to just see me and Brian try to, like, I don't know, sing Fish songs in unison when one of us plays guitar. I mean, I wouldn't want to watch that, but it's, you know, it's certainly out there. But yeah, if you've hung this far, thank you very much for hanging with us on this Sunday night. We appreciate it. We love doing it. We love that you're out there. We hope that you're social distancing and flattening the curve. Just stay home. There's no place to go. There's no restaurants. Like me and my wife say, this is like a weird extended maternity leave minus the cool restaurants we could go to.
Yeah.
Doing a lot of cooking at home.
Yeah.
Also, God, Tim, thanks a lot for coming out.
This was a blast. I had the best. I had a great day in general. It was a fucking great day.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So come back next Sunday night. We'll hold hands. We will say kumbaya. And as always, we're going to go beyond the pond.